The first part of the brief that was given me was to kind of give you kind of an overview of the current AI landscape. Um, where to start? I mean, I could just sort of start reciting a whole bunch of stats about adoption, etc., but I'm not going to do that. If we look at the technology, it's a cliche, but it's true. The AI technology continues to advance at an absolutely ludicrous pace, and it's never been more so than in 2026. So arguably, more has happened from a technology standpoint since the turn of the year than in the last 3 years. In fact, there's a term for it, capability overhang. There's now a chart everyone uses. Exponential growth in tech, humans' ability to actually wrap their brains around it at a linear pace, the gap appears to get ever wider. If I can single one thing out that I think is just monumentally impactful from a tech standpoint in the last couple of months, it's agentic AI. Now, it's a buzz phrase, but it was a buzz phrase last year. This year, the reality's turned up. And if you haven't yet tried using this kind of agentic form of technology, then I urge you to do so. Because if you're still just sat there having a conversation back and forth with ChatGPT, how do I put this politely? You will be left in the dust. Agentic is absolutely going to sweep the board here. And this ties entirely into the topic of tonight around ethics, transparency, implications for work itself. I wrote this 10 years ago. I thought 10 years ago, the direction of travel was fairly obvious. What will be still left for us as human beings to still do? What will still be valued? What will technology be let loose to go and do for us? So I think that this the rise of the AI agents. It's the old William Gibson quote: "The future's already here. It's just unevenly distributed." But to go back to that earlier point, I think one of the challenges is that the people who are getting the benefit from it now are getting a benefit at an individual level. You know, corporations, of course, organizations, it's going to take a lot longer. But if you think about it, something like Claude Cowork, here's a bit of technology that, if you allow it to, goes off and does things for you. You could let it loose on your own computer. Confess I've done it. I said, I've been really lazy over the years, completely reorganized my computer for me. And it said, sure, here's a plan. That looks quite good. Go and do it for me. Well, it did. Last night, if you want to, Claude Cowork, you can literally use your phone away from your desk and say, hey, I'm away from my desk, do stuff for me. And if you give it permission, it will open up the applications for you. It will draft stuff for you. It will manipulate spreadsheets. Crazy times that we live in. So I think the long and the short of it is, and I could spend obviously an hours and hours going on about the landscape, but it's a situation we're in that the technology. I used to joke last year that things I'd say at the start of a session would not be true by the end of it. And now it's happened several times. In fact, the pace of development is now measured in hours or indeed in minutes. If you look at Anthropic, I mean, they seem to announce a new feature every day. Andrew Karpathy, one of the world's leading researchers, said even he can't keep up. So it's like, blimey, well, if you can't, it's like, where does that leave the rest of us? I mean, translating that into the whole area of kind of ethics and comms. So I'll try and keep this as brief and on point as possible. So first of all, I think this is an issue that's been around since back at GPT. Transparency. To try and sort of distill this down, disclosure. When is it necessary to tell audiences, clients, or whoever that AI or technology has been in some shape or form involved in the process? Now, arguably, you see the CIPR could say, well, standard line in code of conduct still stands true, that CIPR members are bound by that code of conduct that says you're to act at all times in an open, honest, and transparent fashion. But yes, transparency in the AI world, yes, it gets a little nuanced. Now, I believe the Global Alliance for PR and Comms in 2025, under its responsible AI principles, there's a thing called the Venice Pledge, which the CIPR signed up to. Open disclosure and transparency in the use of AI-generated content, data, and interactions are essential. Okay, now, just to kind of throw a bit of a devil's advocate thing in here, the EU AI Act. Now, I know in the UK, we're not in the EU now, but there we are. But the EU Act, in August of this year, certain aspects of it kick in, one of which are transparency obligations. Now, there's a kind of interesting aspect to the EU AI Act, and it's Article 50, Section 4. There is a thing called the editorial exception clause. What? Yes. Um, there's a whole swathe of examples where actually you don't have to declare that AI was involved, but it hinges on your ability to demonstrate that there has been sufficient human input, human in the loop, and human control. Now, interestingly, the Act's actually narrowed the definition of it, because you might have thought, oh, great, we'll just say, yeah, a human's involved, job done. I don't need to tell people that actually I got 95% of it done by my AI tool. Now, the onus is on being able to kind of actually provide evidence, documented evidence that yes, a human was involved in this process. It wasn't just me pushing a button and copy pasting what came out of the other end, or I've basically got Claude Cowork to go and do it all for me whilst I've gone down the pub. Not that I would. So what am I saying here? I'm basically saying, I know people want sort of nice, clean cut, simple answers to this. Well, I could give you them, but I'd be kind of lying to you. It is unbelievably kind of complicated and nuanced. It's kind of evolving kind of all the time. So I personally think we need to be slightly careful about sort of saying, oh, well, we need to be transparent at all times. Well, what does that actually mean? What does that actually kind of translate into these circumstances where even the EU AI Act is already saying, well, transparency is it's not that easy to define it. So these kind of guardrails and boundaries. So I think we all kind of collectively kind of need to kind of think about what we believe is necessary in terms of transparency. Going back to the agent thing, accountability. So on the one hand, wow, isn't that amazing? Here's a bunch of stuff that now I can get the machine to do for me. I don't have to do it. Isn't that brilliant? How many people think about simplistic example of using AI? I would argue most people today probably do to some extent use an AI note taker in meetings. Isn't that great? I don't know anybody who got into communications ever in history who said, I want to write more meeting reports. No, nobody ever did that. That's time that you go, if I've got a choice of spending an hour writing a meeting report or spending that hour doing something more useful, strategic, creative, value added, I know what you're going to do. So on that level, I'm all for it. I'm all for AI being used intelligently, or AI plus automation being used intelligently to remove a lot of that kind of like sort of necessary, but quite frankly, kind of grunt work from the process, and freeing up more of our time to spend on the stuff that actually does make a difference, and actually relies upon making use of our human expertise, experience, taste, judgment, and so forth. But from a reputational standpoint, just to kind of bring lots of things into relief. So, examples, Air Canada, anybody kind of remembers this one? It was from back in 2024, the Air Canada chatbot case. Cut a long story short, Air Canada, like many organizations, had a chatbot on the website, and the customer went to that chatbot to say, look, I want to claim a refund because I think there's been bereavement, etc. Anyway, the chatbot said, yeah, sorry, you don't get your money back. And person's like, no, hang on, that can't be right. Anyway, they all went to court, and in court, the tribunal ruling was that if you thought you're not liable, well, you are. You can't get off the hook on that one. So that was the example where who's responsible for these outputs? I think it's a bit of a lame excuse to say, it's not my fault. Blame Claude. It's all Claude's fault. I delegated sort of responsibility to Claude for all that, so I get off the hook. So the more general principle there is that for client-facing communications in all of its various formats. So there's the kind of stuff that we're directly responsible for, but also, and I've said this from the very beginning when Stephen Waddington and I wrote our paper back in 2023. This is a bit that I wrote, and I said it's not just about AI and its applications to the work that we do. It's the reputational implications for organizations and entities everywhere about the use of AI. I know we've been still trying to get that seat at the table, at the board table. Well, we need it more than ever. We're the ones that are best placed to understand the reputational implications about decisions people are going to make about the use of AI across the board. Yeah. Again, bear in mind, the general public, I think, is increasingly more skeptical about AI use. I think it was a YouGov poll said that 41% of people in the UK don't think AI is actually going to do any good at all. So there's a whole issue of kind of social license. But yes, there's a whole. I'm clearly a big fan of AI, but I'm extremely mindful of the fact that it's not all sweetness and light. There are all these other kind of issues another aspect from the ethics standpoint, bias and unintended harm. Now, I know the whole bias issue around large language models has been there from the very beginning. So very, very briefly, large language models are all built in pretty much the same way. You get a whole bunch of kind of training data, throw it at the model, you kind of tweak it, and then eventually you've got something that you kind of put out there. So self-evidently, depending on the original training, the outputs that come out of it, they all, for example, will take huge swathes of the open web. Oh dear, all humanity is there, the good, the bad, and the awful. I know they would argue, yes, we don't just take that raw stuff as is. We can try to kind of mitigate against bias. Nevertheless, it's impossible for language models to eradicate kind of bias completely. So again, ultimately, we are responsible for our use of these tools and technologies. And if nothing else, we have agency ourselves to determine whether or not the outputs we're getting back aren't right, are biased, and then we can sort of mitigate against it. I mean, the CIPR's official position is that as PR professionals, we have a professional responsibility to try to prevent AI systems being used by organizations to perpetrate online harms, which, if you think about it, actually covers an enormous range of sort of possible things we might now need to take into account. Other aspects of this, data use and consent. I think this is something that has gone largely unnoticed. Good old GDPR, been around for a while. It's still, I think, tended to focus on, email spam and things like that. Although notably, I'm not aware of anybody that's been really kind of like hauled up in front of the ICO really for doing it. We all know it goes on. Constantly day in, day out, annoyed by organizations that use a coercive opt-in. I'm sure you've experienced this. Oh, look, they're offering me this great free piece of content. Oh, check the box if you want to get marketing material or sign up for our email newsletter. No, I don't. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't have that unless you check that box. Come on, dudes. That's a coercive opt-in. How dare you? That shouldn't be allowed. That's against GDPR. Yeah, it's still universally there. But when it comes to AI and the language model, I think there's a subtle one there. Personally identifiable information has been sucked up into those training data sets. I guess the EU is itself kind of asking those very questions, and we'll see how that plays out. The age-old one, say age-old, 3 years in AI is several lifetimes. This whole thing about, I've got highly sensitive confidential information from the client here. Ooh, can I put that into ChatGPT? Well, yeah, you can. If you've set your data controls to the appropriate setting, which is no, I don't want you to use this to train your model. Yeah, you should be fine. Should be okay. Now, but from a GDPR standpoint, hang on a minute. Where is that ChatGPT server? It's outside the EU. It is. It's almost certainly in the US. So you're probably fine in terms of looking at that confidential information from one perspective. From a GDPR perspective, the mere fact that information might be leaving your machine, and even if it's temporarily being saved and stored on a machine outside of a certain kind of jurisdiction, now a cynic might say, yeah, who's going to know? But that isn't the point. If we talk about ethics, about doing the right thing, I think these are all aspects of the whole thing here. I think from an agency's perspective, client sensitivity and protection, I think I've argued along that most standard contracts would cover you, because by definition, if you sign a contract with a client, then there's always going to be a kind of a confidentiality clause, a general confidentiality clause. Again, this comes back to the whole transparency thing. Do we need to tell clients that we're using AI? Well, I think the expectation now is, well, why aren't you? There's a whole other topic, of course, is the downside there is, well, why is it taking you 4 hours to draft a press release? It'll actually take you 3 minutes now. I'll pay you for 3 minutes. I'm not going to pay you for 4 hours. So is the billable hour finally going to hit the dust? Tying what you get paid to how long it takes to do things is increasingly kind of difficult to kind of justify, or whether we like it or not. I think certainly if you're agency side, clients are increasingly going to ask, and they are asking those sorts of questions. Well, it's quite interesting. I don't know if you saw this story a few weeks ago where a Price Waterhouse, the management consultants, they went to their accountants, Grant Thornton, and said, why why aren't we getting a reduction this year for our auditing bill? Should you should be using AI to charge us less, not more? And Grant Thornton keeled over and said, "Oh, okay, yeah, we'll give you a discount." They gave them 15% off the bill for. They said we're going to charge them 50% less in 2026 than they did 2025. And then everyone went, "Well, hang on a minute, Pricewaterhouse, or can't your own clients now use the same argument against you? Why aren't we getting a discount? Why aren't you giving us the benefits of AI reduction there?" But in terms of what we should be, disclosure of what we will do and what we will use, I don't think we need to get to the stage of kind of saying, well, that press release, I wrote the headline, but ChatGPT wrote the first paragraph. And hey, between the two of us, we had a bit of a chat and we ended up writing the rest of it. I don't think we don't tell people that, oh, look, I used a Google search to help me kind of do this. But yes, we almost certainly should be declaring the fact that we are using AI. We probably should give a broad indication of the kinds of tools that are being used. And yes, some indication as to what those use cases might look like. I don't know how I do for time. I'm kind of round it up now. But again, just in terms of, I mean, there are kind of loads of examples from a reputational standpoint in terms of the use, kind of the misuse of AI. I think, and kind of quite an old one now, really. But in 2024, the then CEO of WPP, Mark Reed, some bad actors basically kind of created a fake AI generated avatar of Mark Reed and a fake WhatsApp profile, tried to kind of fool people into thinking this was the real Mark Reed, presumably with the aim of extracting money and other such from now. Fortunately for Mark Reed, that they didn't get away with it. But there was an example, I think, in Hong Kong, where apparently fraudsters did indeed convince somebody that they were the CEO and convince them that yes, do transfer this $25 million to this bank account, because I'm telling you, because I'm the CEO. And allegedly they did get away with it. Anyway, I guess to try and kind of sum it all up, the technology continues to advance at a ludicrous pace. It doesn't show any signs of kind of slowing down. I think that does raise this kind of conundrum between, look at these kind of efficiency and effectiveness benefits I could potentially get from using this stuff. But what does that mean from an ethical standpoint in terms of, just because I can do this, should I? What does that mean for transparency, for disclosure, and so on and so forth? And I'm not going to pretend that I've got all the answers, but I guess that's the point of this evening, to explore, I guess, the multifaceted nature of it, the nuance, the complexity. And hey, who knows? Who am I to judge? Maybe by the end of the session, you will have come up with a silver bullet magic solution to all this, and I applaud you for it. I suspect it will probably raise more questions that could be answered in a single evening session. But if nothing else, you will go in kind of armed with kind of a broader perspective on what you may need to take into account to try and navigate this. And this is a ChatGPT phrase, the ever-changing landscape. Yeah, that's a bit of a giveaway, isn't it? Yeah. That's a ChatGPT phrase. Avoid at all costs. Never use the ever-changing landscape. Anyway, there we go.